Okay, bonjour everybody. Welcome to this session with Ogre and Campaign Magazine. Welcome to Personified Advertising, Engaging Consumers in a Cookieless World. My name is Edward Craig. I'm the head of Content Labs at Campaign. Consumers have awakened to the value of their data and need to protect their privacy. Regulators are on a righteous mission and to protect the consumers, and the digital advertising ecosystem is undergoing a significant transformation. The days of advertising relying on personal data are numbered. So how do we provide a meaningful experience and leave a lasting impression on consumers while future-proofing our advertising? That's what we're here to discuss, and I've got three great speakers with me today, and I'll quickly introduce them, please. To start with, we have Dan at the end there.
Hi everyone, my name's Dan Hagan. I'm the Global Head of Media Experience at Havas Media Group. And I mean, you introduced by talking about meaningful experiences, so that's, we view ourselves as the meaningful media agency, so right up our street.
Great, and we've also got Monica.
Hello, I'm Monica Taylor. I'm the Global Head of Social Media at McCann. We're the creative part of this, so I'd always say that creativity is what underpins this, and I think I'm allowed to say I hate cookies.
Marcello, how are you with cookies?
I hate cookies. I eat cookies. I'm Marcello Gruppo. I'm responsible for the insight part at Ogre for Southern Europe. And I love the way the market is changing because we will live without the cookie that she hates. So we will have to find a way.
Oh, great. So begone the cookie is where we're starting. So the cookieless future is nearly upon us. But what is the prognosis? And how, more importantly, how are your clients adapting? Monica.
Yeah, I mean, this has been coming for some time. And you know, interestingly, what cookies promised and what data's promised is this amazing, like, hyper-contextual, personalised targeting. That's actually been really difficult to get to. Like, getting to all of the data points that you need to get the perfect moment, perfect time. What it's sort of resulted in is a slight amount of internet stalking. At McCann, we run an amazing amount of data research, and our latest report into the truth about Britain said that the number one reason for moral decline in the country, actually it was the number two reason for moral decline in the country, was the internet. So I'm like, oh, wow, we're not in a good space here. I think the prognosis is actually quite positive, although that sounds like very doom and gloom. I actually think it's going to force us to be smarter and cleverer and more creative in how we go about doing this. So I think the experience should get better because we're not quite so obsessed with this idea of, like, how do I identify that person? Like, we'll go back to brand building, you know, the classic brand techniques of broad beam, reach, you know, those things still matter. Like, those things still, and actually, we've swung from people saying, I want personalisation to I don't. And I think, unfortunately, that's a bit of an overhang from us not doing it very well.
Dan?
So, I mean, I think there's a couple of points in this. One is that we're in this transitional moment, which I think makes it somewhat challenging because we don't really know how long we're going to be in this moment for. So, you know, we thought cookies were going to go away this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after that. But I think the direction of travel, and not just from a technological perspective, but from a human perspective, from a legislative perspective, is going to be less pervasive surveillance, and therefore we have to find a way as being as good at what we do as we can. And I agree with the point that I think it will make us more thoughtful. And I think, and I always get in trouble for, or I get myself in trouble for saying stuff like this. I feel like I'm in trouble for saying stuff like this, is that it means we can sort of fall back a little bit on some of the principles that have been around for decades around advertising. We've just either forgotten them or deployed them incredibly badly because we had this crutch that was like, I've got this mountain of data that tells me who these people are, but in reality there are studies that show that it gets gender right less than half the time. It's like worse than a shot in the dark, yeah? So if we fall back, and we have a really simple, you know, mantra for this, we think about the connection with people in the right context, when they're, you know, in the right mindset, the right time, moments, those are really important. And when you can deliver the right content, great creative stuff that's going to capture their attention. And I think thinking about that, then we use the best technology to deliver it in the best way, but start with that.
So, Marcello, they both talk about quality of work. Is that what you're finding in your experience? We've just not done it very well, as Monica said.
Yeah, and I agree also with Dan when he says that it's a transitional period that we can't understand how much it will last. So that's why I think that clients has to anticipate the change because they can't predict how long it will take. And being creative also in the use of data is key, both for advertisers and the partner they choose for these kind of solutions.
So what do you feel, Marcello, then, is essential to future-proofing a digital strategy? If you've got a mountain of data, but which we haven't used very well, but data is central to the future too. So
I think that listen the market needs, bottom up, it's crucial. The market is showing a need for privacy, respect, for intimity, and we have to find a way to respect this need and to satisfy this need. At the same time, advertisers are asking for relevance, effectiveness of their communication. And the combination of the two is exactly where we have to find the right solution and the balance. At Augury, we defined the personified targeting that is going in the direction of this, satisfying the needs for privacy, maintaining the quality of and the relevance of the ad we are serving. Focusing also on using the data we have, but without any personal information related to that.
and did you call that personified advertising rather than personalized advertising?
It's personification. It's based on personification. Literally means associating human characteristic to an animated things. Okay. So, and what we are basically doing is exactly this: translating the needs that the user had in the past, enrich them with other source of information, and attach it to the impression that is not embedding any personal information that could be dangerously spread all around the net.
Or used badly, I guess.
Or used badly.
Dan, what do you? What are for you are the essential ingredients for future-proofing digital strategy?
So, I mean, I think we need to be mindful of the data that we can get, both legally, but also, I guess, morally. It might be a little too strong, but ethically. And then use that to get as full an understanding of people as we possibly can, and then use the right data techniques to push that understanding into media with the best level of accuracy. And again, I have to use that word a little bit loosely because in a media campaign, the level of accuracy, you might not want it to be that accurate, depending on what your objectives are. Overshow might be super important to you because you have a core consumer and you have a wider consumer that you want to warm up over a course of time. So a lot of this depends on your objectives and really good planning principles. One of the things that we see is super important is a return maybe to panel data. So we have actually invested recently in the last year and a half in a large volume of panel data across multiple markets at a respondent level. And that means we can ingest all of that into our systems. And then we can start to build interesting audiences using all of that data. And then instead of then trying to match an ID to that and push that ID right the way through the process, which with panel data is very challenging because the panels are relatively small, instead what we're doing is trying to work out what are the characteristics of those people and then matching that data algorithmically into platforms, into DSPs, into, in some cases, TV panels, so I can better choose the TV shows that I want to associate with this particular campaign. And yes, you're obviously losing fidelity in that process, but you're trying to be a little bit more accurate than you would be otherwise. And I think with the advances in machine learning, the advances in technology and data science, it gives us really, we can explain a fair amount, and that's kind of all we're looking for is like, I think to this degree of probability that this group of people are those people I identified as my core growth target audience at the beginning of this process. Right, let's reach them in the best possible ways we can.
And Monica, you find yourself working in a similar way?
Yeah,
they both talked about characteristics.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like the one that's going, it's all bad. It's not. And data isn't going away. I think that's the truth. So clients are investing in first-party data. We knew that's something they really needed to do, especially when you're working with a lot of FMCG brands who don't have a direct-to-consumer model. Suddenly they found themselves really losing out because they have no control over their own staff. So absolutely, a lot of what Dan has said is what we're working on as an organisation. We're looking at, we have a huge research unit which has a lot of proprietary data points in it. We're very lucky. IPG bought Axiom 4 years ago, which gives us access to 2 billion data points. And actually, so that, but actually this is about what does that data stack look like, and then how do you access that. But I think that move away from what was actually quite crude. So when I say it was bad, we took quite a simple approach, because actually what the cookie gave us was a bit of a shortcut, really. It kind of went, okay, I can track you, so I'm literally going to track you, right? So that, I think it's a good thing that that's going away, because although the data science on this is going to be hard, I think we're going to get to a better solution. And I actually love this idea of a personified piece, because actually that's kind of what we were trying to get to, I think. I think we just kind of got a little bit specific and a little bit simple in its application. So that thoughtful word, I think, that Dan used is actually right. I think this is about that. And then the bit that you can't ignore is the creative layer, which I obviously am going to say, but 70% of ad effectiveness is creative. So you've really got to sort of bring this together. It literally is in Dan's job title, but the whole experience is what's going to matter here. And I think being more thoughtful about how you deliver that and how do you storytell through that. Digital has also sort of occupied a very bottom of funnel approach, very performance. I think what we're starting to see is people thinking, okay, hang on, this can do all of the layers of this. How do you storytell? How do you convert? And actually you can do it all at the same time, which is super smart, right? If you were going to say, in my marketing plan, I want a channel that can do everything from brand build to performance conversion, the digital channels can do that in a really smart way. So it gives you a great environment to play in.
What are those core ingredients though, that are going to make this work? You mentioned creativity. Can you give me some of the more core ingredients if there's an agency who's trying to transform? What should they be focusing on?
Can I say the metaverse? No, I'm joking. I think it comes down to the human. It's truly understanding. We think about data and mining and attention, but we end up it extrapolates out what's actually going on, and actually thinking about a human in the round. So everyone's really busy, right? There's things coming at us all the time. Our contact with media has actually got bigger. Our media footprint and touch points has got bigger than it has in the last 10 years, but it's more fragmented. And then we have life going on, right? All of our lives are really complicated. I was doing something earlier and my child was going, where's my dinner money? And I'm like, whoa, okay. So we've got a lot of stuff coming at us all the time. And I think to truly understand what that is, which is kind of crazy because we are all people, but then we kind of put them on a spreadsheet and we forget that sometimes.
I mean, I go back to the really simple mantra we're trying to talk inside of Havas is connection, context, and content. And I think that kind of covers most of it. So how do I identify that audience? And back to what I talked about, all the panel data and bringing all your data sources together to identify where am I going to get the most growth from? And then how can I connect that growth or that audience to channels as accurately as possible, as ethically as possible, with the right legislation and governance, and also future focus, so that I can do it next year as well as this year. It's connection. Then context. Where are they and what are they doing? So there's really simple examples in this sort of stuff, yeah? Gordon's Gin between 5 and 6 on a Friday is a great time to advertise Gordon's Gin because people really want a gin and tonic after they finish their week's work. And if you get the first bar call of the night, chances are they're going to have 2 or 3 more afterwards, yeah? That's just, this is basic stuff. But if you think about that and then push that into a digital environment, you get really smart now. Yeah, you can start targeting train stations where there's delays by using the contextual data from the train stations, yeah? Your home base, one of our clients in the UK, funnily enough, people think about discretionary home purchases a few days before payday and a few days after payday. Of course they do. Yeah, you're not going to think about it when you don't have any money. You're not going to buy a couple of new lamps when you have no money. But if you know you have a need, you're going to wait until I get paid on Friday. Great. So we upweight all of our search then. This is really, really simple, and I feel like an idiot telling lots of people this sort of stuff. But then how can I use data to make that really smart? And then to your final point, now obviously I work at a media agency, so I would say that creative is about 50% of the overall effectiveness of. I will quote data to decisions, top 10 drivers of ROI. Creative has a 12 times multiplier, and if you take all the media ones, they have about a 12.25 times multiplier. I'm messing. It's quite an old piece of research. But content and creative, again, fundamental. And if you're a creative and you're making some creative, but you're not thinking about where that's going to show up in media, you're not doing your job. And if you're a media professional and you don't even know what the creative is when you're putting together your media plan, you're not doing your job. You got to think about all of those things. And if you're a media planner, I say this to all of my media planners, if you're a media planner, your client is going to beat the crap out of you for performance. Yeah, the campaign's not performing, it's your fault because you've got a lot of levers to pull. But if 50%, or hey, now it's 70%, if 70% is actually driven by the creative, and I have no control, no opinion, and I'm getting beaten up for performance, I'm setting myself up to get kicking. When actually what I should be doing is talking really nicely with the creative partners and say, guys, we got to work on this together to get the best possible experience.
So stop fighting with her and using weapon as a data.
It's bans that firms relationships.
And on the other side, it's missing just one last piece, that is, we have to ensure that the ad is visible. Because we spoke about the data, we spoke about the relevance, we spoke about the 70 or 50, I didn't get it, if the 50% of the weight of the creative. But at the end, what matters is that the ad should be seen into the screen. Because if we are not delivering in front of the eye of the users, then the creative, it could be the best creative ever, but it will be useless and not effective. That's why we think that focusing on 100% visible format is the solution to add the last piece to the data and the creative and drive attention, or whatever we want to call it, but effective communication through the creative.
The example of the Gordon's Gin was lovely. And is that what you're finding in your experience, Monica, that you're using almost old-fashioned, you're going back to some old-fashioned ideals, but using modern technology, modern techniques to execute?
Two. Good. It's going to be a good question. Yeah, it's always a challenging one in creative. I don't think creative particularly has changed. I think what is different, and yes, absolutely, we want everyone to work together. I think the challenges that you have now is creative at the core is right, but there are a couple of things that you have to add on. One is a really good understanding of media and media formats. That has got incredibly complicated, and then you've got social networks that are bringing out something new every day, and the algorithm's changing all the time. That isn't something we had to deal with in the old days. Like we had a 20 and a 30 and maybe even a 60-second TV, and we were clear. Right now, it's changing all the time, and that, to be really effective, you've got to get that right. So that additional sort of layer on top. But I think, yeah, the old principles, I don't think they went away. I think we've just got to get smarter. And then the second part is we have to create such a volume right now that it is more challenging to get really good quality out all the time. So if you're running at full speed, your ad wear out is fast and you need a lot of it, which isn't something, again, we had to worry about too much. And then that whole ecosystem is more complicated because people are in more places paying attention to more things. So that the view across it all, I think, is challenging.
But I was going to add, because one of the thoughts from a slightly different take on this is that, you go back to the internet making the world or the country worse, and advertising, if you rank up industries that are trusted by the person on the street, I think advertising is the worst. Yeah, we are the least trusted, below politicians, which in today's environment is mind-boggling. Yeah, but I think a combination of the way we've treated advertising that has been fueled by the internet has driven that. Because when you ask people why they don't like advertising, they talk about bombardment, they talk about irrelevance, they talk about all the stuff that all that data was supposed to make better. But we're in this world where we have all these silos lined up next to each other. So one thing that I don't have a solution to this, I would throw this out to all the smart people around, is when we get all this stuff right, we think about where we want to show up, we think about what we're going to say, and those things are really married together and we're being completely viewed. We have to find a way of controlling how much crap we're putting out there. Because the level of frequency of advertising that sits in the marketplace at the moment is mind-boggling. It's just crazy, and I genuinely think that is a massive, massive driver of why the media experience is worse, because I happen to visit one website, and I'm now going to get an ad from them 30 times a day for the next 30 days. And I have a bunch of examples, but I put examples like this in talks I give and stuff, because I went to their website to cancel my subscription, and then they've just spent a frequency of, I can't even do the math fast enough, 1,000 over a month, they don't know why they're targeting me. They have no idea why they're targeting me. I just showed up once. And I think that's something we need to fix, because that's always going to be a negative dragging us down if we don't figure it out. And with all the silos, that's really, really hard to fix, because no one shares data across this stuff.
So, technology. What does a good tech partner look like? And what are the key attributes for it, especially in this modern environment where quality is dipped, all sorts of regulations? What does it look like? Key attributes.
I think that being able to change, anticipate, as we were saying before, the change, adapt to what's happening on the market is crucial, and being future-proof. I mean, not waiting for the apocalypse or what's happening on the market that we don't know, but trying to anticipate the change and being ready for the future is one of the characteristics that the partner should have. Then, again, listen the market and understand where the market is going from bottom up, not just waiting for laws or big actors taking decisions that will affect the job that we are doing. So being reactive and having a strategy and not just a tactic to be ready to switch overnight, but think with a long-term sight and be future-proof.
So, future-proof, but that comes from being adaptive, not predicting the future.
It's a combination of things. If you are able to predict the future, then you won't adapt. But being changing overnight is not the solution. I mean, and I'm referring to the ID solution that are rising in this period, that are just changing the protocol of the communication in a standardized model of ID-based solution. So something that is for sure a short-term tactic that will work, but it's not going for long-term safety. That's the point.
In your experience, a tech partner,
Working creative.
I thought I'd go for it anyway.
I think you probably said it in the answer. It's partnership, really. And that works two ways. So it's a trusted partners, and I love that idea of the long-term strategy, because actually if you're working together, you can feed information to each other. So what are we seeing? What are you seeing? How does that start to work and look like? And when Marcello was talking, it was making me think about have a very good friend who describes sort of business at the moment as being a bit like it's a marathon running at sprint pace, which is like crazy, because that long-term view is so important, but we're seeing so much change on a day-to-day that having a partner who can help inform that without you needing to sort of cover all of the bases all by yourself is so valuable.
It's good. Even the creatives.
Even the creatives.
Even the creatives. Dan.
So I'm desperately trying to think of three, because I like to think in threes. It's a strategic thing, yeah, always. But I have two, and maybe a third will come. One is transparency. So I think there's a lot of technology out there, and if you can't see inside the boxes to understand how it works, that's really challenging for me, because someone's going to ask me, and I am non-technical, so I have to be able to explain it to my clients, because they ask us to be transparent, therefore I need transparency from all of our partners. Which then brings me to the second one, is I also need to be able to explain that to my clients. My second would be simplicity. And I'll tell a story that I told earlier, not to the rest of you, so it's okay. I've been in a Palais this morning, and I listened to two different talks, and one of the talks, there was so much language that put two English words together to create a non-English word that I almost laughed out loud a couple of times, but we just invent so much crap. You know, we invent language, we put words together, and we must behave in this way, and it's just like, it's just what it was 20 years ago, but we're using different tech and different data and stuff like that, but the principle's the same. Let's not try to confuse each other and confuse ourselves. It's hard enough, the explosion of stuff happening around us, without inventing insane language and making things so complex. So, transparency, simplicity, so that I can explain it to my clients and I can explain it to my mother. You know, that's the test, isn't it? You can explain it to your mother. And I wish I had a third one, but I don't have a third one right now.
Well,
cheap, free, there you go.
What about privacy? With all the regulations.
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably lumble that under transparency, I guess.
Right.
Okay. But yes, definitely.
I felt
Yeah.
it was a notable absence. I don't know if it's just we got to the stage where it's a given now. It's a cookieless future.
I mean, you described it already, though, talking about IDs, because effectively an ID is a cookie by another name. The technology is largely the same. It's the consent that's different, and the consent framework has a lot of arrows being shot at it because it's a thing you click on to get it out of your way. It's not really consent; it's convenience. It's still a C though, so it still works.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the whole conversation is underpinned by privacy. We've got to here because of that. I thought it was really interesting. I don't watch TV very often. TV was on, and literally there's an ad running for Apple at the moment where they're telling you to go and to clear your app data and how to do it, and they're doing it because they're saying we're the guardians of your privacy. And I thought, isn't that really interesting that a tech company is literally telling you to go and to delete your data because data is in the hands of the consumer. We understand what it means and how valuable it is. So like the whole currencies change. I think cookieless is just one outcome of that. We've been seeing this with changes in GDPR and what it says on that website and how it's been implemented. Like all of this has not led to a good place, and that ultimately comes down to trust, doesn't it? Trust between people and their data and their brands and how we're seeing an advertising industry in general, unfortunately.
Okay, that's a great example, the Apple one, but they're also using privacy there to leverage their brand. This is a piece of brand advertising. Who knew we would end up there? Sort of full circle. Okay, so thank you very much so far. Just to round up, what's been your one key takeaway? I'm going to go for mine last, by the way, because it happened downstairs. But what's the one key takeaway that you guys could take from today's discussion? What have you learned? You look ready to go.
I'm not ready to go.
Dan's trying to think of three things.
I'm trying to think of three things. Yeah, it's got to be three takeaways. But we have 1, 2, 3, so we're okay. Okay, so for me is that I think there is a very, very bright future for all forms of advertising if we think about the principles of communication that have been around for, let's face it, centuries. But we think about all the incredible tools that we have to deploy them in a modern way. And I think that's really exciting.
I think actually it was something that Dan said. I love the idea of simplicity. Actually, let's take this back to where we came from. But actually, and brand agencies have been talking about this for a long time. But what is the role of the brand in that relationship with the consumer? So what is the meaningful role that you're trying to develop? Because if everything stems off that, it should all be right. Like let's go back to basics.
On my side, the challenge I see, that is what I'm understanding, is that we have to combine a lot of pieces of the whole of a whole story, and for advertisers it will be difficult to find the best partner at any stage. That's why we will have probably to cooperate and work all together to offer something that makes sense as one single solution that is, again, safe, simple and future-proof.
That's brilliant, thank you. Mine, for what it's worth, was the better verse, which was your two words chunked together. So thank you very much for poisoning my brain with that. I think that's all we've got time for now, but thank you very much indeed for our panel and for this fascinating discussion, please.